Every day, billions of transactions happen across the world. A pharmaceutical company in Mumbai ships medicine to a hospital in Berlin. A software firm in Sao Paulo delivers code to a client in Tokyo. A family walks into a restaurant in Nairobi and trusts that the food on the table is safe to eat. What holds all of this together? Quality, not as a buzzword, not as a slogan on a wall. Quality as a system, a deliberate, repeatable way of doing things right. ISO stands for the International Organization for Standardization. Founded in 1946 and headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, ISO brings together national standards bodies from over 170 countries. Its purpose is straightforward: develop international standards that make industries safer, more efficient, and more trustworthy. Among the thousands of standards ISO has published, one stands apart: ISO 9001. ISO 9001 specifies the requirements for a Quality Management System, a QMS. It is the most widely adopted management standard in the world. More than 1,350,000 organizations are certified to it, spanning every industry you can name: manufacturing, healthcare, construction, education, technology, government services, and here is the critical point. ISO 9001 is not limited by size. A 5-person consultancy can implement it. So can a multinational corporation with 50,000 employees. The standard was designed to be universal. So why do organizations pursue certification? Because it proves, to customers, regulators, and partners, that your organization doesn't just promise quality, it has built a system to deliver it, consistently, reliably, and with a commitment to getting better over time. The backbone of ISO 9001 is the PDCA cycle: plan, do, check, act. Every clause in this standard maps back to this cycle. It is the engine of continual improvement, and it will be our compass throughout this video. Let us begin. We will walk through every clause, from foundational concepts to certification itself. By the end, you will understand not just what ISO 9001 requires, but why it works. Before we reach the requirements that auditors assess, the standard opens with 3 introductory clauses. Think of them as the foundation beneath the foundation. They are not auditable, but they frame everything that follows. Clause 1 is scope. It defines what ISO 9001 covers, and the answer is broad. The standard applies to any organization that needs to demonstrate its ability to consistently provide products and services that meet customer and regulatory requirements. Any organization, any size, any sector. There are no exemptions by industry. Clause 2 is normative references. It points to one companion document, ISO 9000-2015, the standard that defines the vocabulary. If ISO 9001 is the rulebook, ISO 9000 is the dictionary. Clause 3 is terms and definitions. And this is worth pausing on, because the 2015 edition introduced several important terminology changes. What was once called products is now products and services, acknowledging that service industries are equally within scope. The old trio of documents, quality manual, and records has been unified under a single term: documented information. Suppliers are now external providers, and work environment is now environment for the operation of processes. These are not cosmetic changes. They reflect a deliberate shift toward language that fits every type of organization, not just manufacturing. Now, with the vocabulary established and the scope defined, we move into the requirements themselves, starting with context. Chapter 2, Clause 4, Context of the Organization. Clause 4 asks a deceptively simple question: who are you, and where do you stand? Before an organization can build a quality management system, it must understand itself, its environment, its pressures, its stakeholders. Without that understanding, the system is built on assumptions, and assumptions crack under pressure. Subclause 4.1 requires the organization to identify internal and external issues that are relevant to its purpose and strategic direction. Internal issues might include workforce competence, organizational culture, or the age of your technology. External issues could be market trends, regulatory changes, economic conditions, or competitive pressures. The standard does not prescribe a specific tool. You can use a SWOT analysis, a PESTLE analysis, or your own method. What matters is that the analysis is done, and it is current. Subclause 4.2 broadens the lens to interested parties. These are the people and organizations that can affect, or be affected by, your QMS. Customers are the obvious ones, but interested parties also include employees, suppliers, regulatory bodies, shareholders, and sometimes even the communities where you operate. The standard requires you to understand their needs and expectations, because those expectations shape what your QMS must deliver. Subclause 4.3 is about scope. Every organization must define the boundaries of its quality management system. What is included? What is excluded? And why? This must be documented. If you exclude a clause, say design and development because you manufacture to a customer-provided specification, you need to justify that exclusion. It cannot compromise your ability to deliver conforming products and services. Subclause 4.4 brings it all together. Here, the organization must establish its processes, what they are, how they interact, what inputs they require, what outputs they produce, and who is responsible. Let us make this tangible. Imagine a mid-sized electronics manufacturer. Their context analysis reveals that a key external issue is a new environmental regulation in their largest export market. An interested party, their biggest distributor, has started requiring sustainability certifications. Their QMS scope covers design, production, and after-sales service at 2 facilities. And their process map shows 12 core processes, from order intake through final inspection and shipping. That is Clause 4 in action. Understanding the terrain before you start building. Now that we understand the context, let us look at who drives the system forward. Leadership. Chapter 3. Clause 5. Leadership. If Clause 4 is about understanding where you are, Clause 5 is about who takes responsibility for where you are going. And the 2015 edition of ISO 9001 made a significant change here. In the previous version, ISO 9001-2008, organizations could appoint a management representative, a single person who carried the quality flag on behalf of the leadership team. In practice, this often meant top management could delegate quality and step away. The 2015 edition removed that role, deliberately. Subclause 5.1 requires top management to demonstrate leadership and commitment, not by signing a policy and filing it away, by actively promoting the process approach, by ensuring quality objectives are set and aligned with strategic direction, by making resources available, by engaging, directing, and supporting the people who contribute to the system's effectiveness. The word used in the standard is demonstrate. Auditors will look for evidence that leaders are involved, in reviews, in decisions, in the culture of the organization. Subclause 5.1.2 focuses specifically on customer focus. Top management must ensure that customer requirements are determined, understood, and consistently met. They must ensure that risks and opportunities that could affect product and service conformity are identified and addressed. And they must ensure that the focus on enhancing customer satisfaction is maintained, not as a department's job, but as a leadership priority. Subclause 5.2 addresses the quality policy. This is the organization's public commitment to quality. A good quality policy is not vague. It is appropriate to the organization's purpose and context. It provides a framework for setting quality objectives. It includes a commitment to satisfying requirements and to continual improvement. And critically, it must be communicated, not just posted on a wall, understood by the people who do the work, available to relevant interested parties. Subclause 5.3 covers roles, responsibilities, and authorities. Top management must ensure that responsibilities are assigned, communicated, and understood throughout the organization. Everyone should know what they are accountable for within the QMS. Leadership in ISO 9001 is not a title. It is a behavior. The standard demands that quality starts at the top, and it checks whether that is actually happening. With leadership in place, the organization is ready to plan. Clause 6 is where the organization looks ahead. It asks, what could go wrong? What should we aim for? And how will we manage change? Subclause 6.1 introduces risk-based thinking, arguably the most significant conceptual shift from the 2008 edition. In ISO 9001-2008, there was a dedicated clause for preventive action. It was often treated as an afterthought, a box to tick. The 2015 edition replaced it with something far more embedded. Risk-based thinking is not a single clause. It is woven throughout the entire standard. Every process, every plan, every decision should consider what could go wrong and what opportunities could be seized. Now, and this is important, ISO 9001 does not require a formal risk management framework. It does not demand a risk register or a quantitative risk matrix, though organizations are free to use them. What it requires is that the organization thinks systematically about uncertainty. Consider a logistics company. A key risk might be that their sole shipping partner increases rates by 30%. The opportunity might be that a new regional hub could reduce delivery times. Clause 6.1 asks, have you identified these? Have you planned actions to address them? And have you evaluated whether those actions actually work? Subclause 6.2 covers quality objectives. These must be consistent with the quality policy. They must be measurable. They must be monitored. They must be communicated. And the organization must plan how to achieve them. What will be done, what resources are needed, who is responsible, when it will be completed, and how results will be evaluated. In practice, this means objectives like reduce customer complaints by 15% within 12 months, not improve quality. Subclause 6.3 addresses the planning of changes. When the organization decides to change its QMS, whether due to a new product line, a restructuring, or a process overhaul, those changes must be carried out in a planned and systematic manner. The standard asks the organization to consider the purpose of the change, its potential consequences, resource needs, and any reallocation of responsibilities. No uncontrolled changes. No surprises. Planning complete. Now, the resources to make it happen. A plan is only as good as the support behind it. Clause 7 addresses the resources, the competence, the awareness, the communication, and the documentation that keep the QMS running. Subclause 7.1 covers resources, and it is broader than most people expect. People, naturally. You need enough qualified people to run the system. But also infrastructure, buildings, equipment, technology, transportation. The environment for the operation of processes. Temperature, humidity, lighting, hygiene, noise, whatever your processes demand. Monitoring and measuring resources, calibrated, traceable, fit for purpose. And, new in the 2015 edition, organizational knowledge. Organizational knowledge is the collective wisdom the organization has built. Lessons learned, process expertise, institutional memory. The standard requires that this knowledge is determined, maintained, and made available as needed, and that the organization considers how to acquire new knowledge when circumstances change. Subclause 7.2 is competence. For every role that affects quality, the organization must determine the required competence, through education, training, or experience. It must ensure people meet those requirements, and it must evaluate whether training and development actions were effective. Not just, did they attend the course, but, can they do the job? Subclause 7.3 is awareness. Every person doing work under the organization's control must be aware of the quality policy, relevant quality objectives, their own contribution to the effectiveness of the QMS, and the implications of not conforming to requirements. Subclause 7.4 is communication. The organization must determine what it needs to communicate, internally and externally, when to communicate it, with whom, and how. This is not ad hoc. It is planned and systematic. Subclause 7.5 is documented information. This replaces the old document control and record control clauses from 2008. And here is a notable change. The 2015 edition no longer requires a quality manual. That document, once mandatory, is now optional. But documentation itself is far from optional. The organization must create and maintain documented information required by the standard. It must control it, ensuring appropriate identification, format, review, approval, availability, protection, and disposition. What changed is flexibility. The standard lets the organization decide what documentation it needs, rather than prescribing a rigid list. The emphasis is on having the right information available to the right people at the right time. Support structures established. Now, the work itself. Clause 8 is the largest clause in the standard. This is where the organization does the work. Designs, produces, delivers, and controls the products and services that reach the customer. Subclause 8.1 sets the stage. Operational planning and control. The organization must plan, implement, and control the processes needed to meet requirements. This means setting criteria for those processes, implementing controls, and keeping documented information to demonstrate that processes were carried out as planned. Subclause 8.2 focuses on the requirements for products and services. This begins with customer communication, establishing clear channels for providing information about products and services, handling inquiries, obtaining customer feedback, and managing customer property. The organization must then determine the requirements related to its products and services. Not just what the customer explicitly asks for, but also requirements the customer may not have stated that are necessary for the intended use, applicable statutory and regulatory requirements, and any requirements the organization considers necessary. Once determined, these requirements must be reviewed before the organization commits to supplying. Can you actually deliver what the customer needs? The review confirms that you can. Subclause 8.3 covers design and development. If the organization designs its own products or services, this clause applies in full. It requires a planned design and development process with defined stages, reviews, verification, and validation activities. Design inputs must be complete and unambiguous. Functional requirements, performance requirements, regulatory requirements, lessons learned from previous designs. Design outputs must meet input requirements and be adequate for subsequent processes like production and service delivery. And design changes must be identified, reviewed, and controlled. Subclause 8.4 addresses externally provided processes, products, and services. In plain language, supplier management. The organization must ensure that externally provided products and services conform to requirements. This means establishing criteria for evaluating, selecting, monitoring, and re-evaluating external providers. It means defining the controls to apply. And it means communicating requirements clearly to providers. What you need, how you will verify it, and what activities you intend to perform at their premises. Subclause 8.5 is production and service provision. The organization must carry out production and service delivery under controlled conditions. These include the availability of documented information that defines product characteristics and activities to be performed, the availability of monitoring and measuring resources, implementation of monitoring and measurement activities, the use of suitable infrastructure and environment, the appointment of competent personnel, and the validation and revalidation of processes where the resulting output cannot be verified by subsequent monitoring or measurement. This subclause also covers identification and traceability, the ability to track a product or service through its life cycle. Customer property. Any property belonging to the customer that is under the organization's control must be identified, protected, and safeguarded. Preservation. Protecting outputs during production and delivery. Post-delivery activities. Warranty, maintenance, recycling, disposal. And control of changes. Any changes to production or service provision must be reviewed and controlled. Subclause 8.6 is release. Products and services must not be released to the customer until planned arrangements have been satisfactorily completed, unless an authorized person or the customer approves otherwise. Evidence of conformity must be retained. Subclause 8.7 is control of non-conforming outputs. When a product or service does not conform to requirements, the organization must ensure it is identified and controlled to prevent unintended use or delivery. The organization must take appropriate action: correction, segregation, return, suspension, informing the customer. And it must retain documented information describing the nonconformity, actions taken, concessions obtained, and the authority deciding the action. Let us trace the full arc. A customer places an order. Requirements are determined and reviewed. The product is designed with controlled inputs and verified outputs. Components are sourced from evaluated suppliers. Production runs under controlled conditions with full traceability. The finished product is inspected and released only after verification. And if something goes wrong, it is caught, contained, and corrected before it reaches the customer. That is Clause 8, the engine room of the QMS. Now, how do we know if the engine is running well? Clause 9 is the mirror. It asks the organization to look at itself honestly, to measure, to evaluate, and to face what the data reveals. Subclause 9.1 covers monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation. The organization must determine what needs to be monitored and measured, what methods will be used, when monitoring and measurement will be performed, and when results will be analyzed and evaluated. This is not an abstract exercise. It means defining specific metrics, defect rates, delivery performance, process cycle times, complaint volumes, and tracking them systematically. A critical component of 9.1 is customer satisfaction monitoring. The organization must monitor customers' perceptions of the degree to which their needs and expectations have been fulfilled. Methods might include surveys, customer feedback forms, market share analysis, warranty claims data, or dealer reports. The standard does not prescribe the method. It requires the effort. Subclause 9.2 is internal audit. The organization must conduct internal audits at planned intervals to provide information on whether the QMS conforms to the organization's own requirements and to the requirements of ISO 9001, and whether it is effectively implemented and maintained. The audit program must consider the importance of the processes concerned, changes affecting the organization, and the results of previous audits. Auditors must be objective and impartial. You do not audit your own work. Audit results must be reported to relevant management, and, crucially, when nonconformities are found, the organization must take correction and corrective action without undue delay. Subclause 9.3 is management review. Top management must review the QMS at planned intervals to ensure its continuing suitability, adequacy, effectiveness, and alignment with strategic direction. The inputs to management review are comprehensive. The status of actions from previous reviews, changes in internal and external issues, information on QMS performance, including trends in customer satisfaction, audit results, process performance, nonconformities, monitoring and measurement results, and the adequacy of resources, risk and opportunity status, and opportunities for improvement. The outputs are equally concrete: decisions and actions related to improvement opportunities, any need for changes to the QMS, and resource needs. Without Clause 9, improvement is guesswork. With it, the organization knows where it stands and what to do next. Chapter 8, Clause 10, Improvement. We have arrived at the final requirement clause, Clause 10, Improvement. This is the ACT phase of the PDCA cycle, the mechanism that prevents the system from stagnating. Subclause 10.1 asks the organization to determine and select opportunities for improvement. This includes improving products and services to meet current and anticipated requirements, correcting, preventing, or reducing undesired effects, and improving the performance and effectiveness of the QMS itself. Improvement is not accidental. It is selected, prioritized, resourced. Subclause 10.2 addresses nonconformity and corrective action. When something goes wrong, a product fails, a process breaks down, a customer complains, the organization must react. Contain the problem, control it, deal with the consequences. But reaction is not enough. The organization must then investigate the root cause, not the surface symptom, the underlying reason. Implement corrective action to eliminate that cause. Verify that the action was effective. And, here is the link to Clause 6, update its risks and opportunities if necessary. the standard explicitly requires the organization to consider whether similar nonconformities exist or could potentially occur elsewhere. One failure is a lesson. A repeated failure is a system deficiency. Documented information must be retained: the nature of the nonconformity, the actions taken, and the results of corrective action. Subclause 10.3 is continual improvement. The organization must continually improve the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the quality management system. It must consider the results of analysis and evaluation, from Clause 9, and the outputs of management review, to determine whether there are needs or opportunities that must be addressed. And with that, the cycle is complete. The ACT phase feeds directly back into Plan. What you learned from checking performance and addressing nonconformities shapes your next round of planning. New risks, new objectives, new improvements. This is the heartbeat of ISO 9001. Not a one-time project. A living, breathing system that gets better by design. Chapter 9. Wrap-up. The certification journey and next steps. Let us bring it all together. Clauses 4 through 6, context, leadership, and planning, form the plan phase. They establish where you are, who is responsible, and what you intend to achieve. Clauses 7 and 8, support and operation, form the do phase. They provide the resources and execute the processes that deliver your products and services. Clause 9, performance evaluation, is the check phase. It measures, audits, and reviews how well the system is working. Clause 10, improvement, is the act phase. It closes the loop by fixing what is broken and strengthening what works. If your organization is ready to pursue certification, here is what the journey looks like. Begin with a gap analysis. Compare your current practices against the requirements of the standard. Identify what you already do well and where the gaps are. Then, design and document your QMS. Define your processes, create the necessary documented information, and establish your quality policy and objectives. Implement the system across the organization. Train your people. Run the processes. Build the habits. Conduct internal audits to verify that the system is working as intended. Hold management reviews to assess performance and make decisions. Then, engage a certification body. The audit happens in 2 stages. Stage 1 reviews your documentation and readiness. Stage 2 verifies implementation on the ground. Auditors observe your processes, interview your staff, and examine your records. If you pass, certification is granted on a 3-year cycle. Annual surveillance audits occur in years 1 and 2. A full recertification audit happens in year 3. The benefits are tangible. Improved consistency, higher customer satisfaction, greater operational efficiency, reduced waste and cost, stronger employee engagement, competitive advantage in tenders and supply chains, and, perhaps most valuable, a structured framework that ensures your organization does not just maintain quality, but continually improves it. ISO 9001 is not a destination. It is a discipline, a way of thinking about work that, once embedded, becomes part of how your organization operates every single day. Thank you for watching. If you found this valuable, subscribe for more standards explained clearly. And if your organization is beginning its quality journey, start with understanding your context, secure your leadership's commitment, and take the first step. The system will take care of the rest.